We all have been eagerly awaiting the return of Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, ever since his show-stealing performance in the Netflix Daredevil series. It seems we could possibly see Kingpin return in the Disney Plus Hawkeye series, where the character has been alluded to. Or depending on when this goes live, perhaps he's already shown up there. And what a better way to celebrate the character than by focusing on some of his most evil moments and his most evil plots. Number 10 created his own crime business monopoly. In issue number 50 of The Amazing Spider-Man, which also coincidentally happens to be Kingpin's first appearance ever, Peter Parker decides to call it quits on being Spider-Man. As soon as Kingpin hears tell of this, he decides to take this opportunity to put his master plan into action. He's been aiming to make the world of crime a business since day one, and now is his golden opportunity. He gets together all the major players, and they all almost unanimously agree to Kingpin taking charge of a new, fully organized and cohesive criminal empire. Well, except for the big man, who actually tries to return to the world of crime after leaving it and take charge of this new organization that Fisk basically just built. Doesn't go so great for him, as you can imagine. Unfortunately, before the end of the issue, Spider-Man has already returned, so this attempt was kinda short-lived, but it wouldn't stop Kingpin from trying to create a vast and efficient criminal empire in the future, all under his own leadership, of course. And at least it lasted for a few issues there. That attempt. Number 9 attempted to silence the press. After bringing together his crime monopoly, Kingpin began a massive crime spree, which got the notice of the press. The Daily Bugle started to talk about who could be behind everything that was going on, and decided to cover it because, well, it was news. Kingpin, however, didn't like that they were alerting the public to what was going on, or having anyone poke their nose into his affairs. He kidnapped J. Jonah Jameson in response and threatened him to stop reporting on the increase in crime or else. Jameson refused to abide, stating he would not be pressured into having someone tell him what he could or couldn't print in his paper. And fortunately, Spider-Man did end up arriving, and while initially getting beaten, would later save the day. Although that's not quite how Jameson, of course, would remember it. He's like, Spider-Man threatened me. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are enjoying this list and you want more lists on Kingpin because Kingpin is awesome and he deserves to be hyped, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8 betrayed Don Rigoletto. The original Rigoletto. There is actually another Don Rigoletto who succeeded the original. He too, however, was taken out by Kingpin. Wilson Fisk used to be the bodyguard, enforcer, and kind of general right-hand man to Don Rigoletto initially in the comics. However, getting in good with Don was all part of Wilson's elaborate plot to take control of the city. He had been building connections for years, waiting for this moment when he would take out his boss and replace him. Fisk killed Rigoletto in a moment of vulnerability, near the end of issue number 3 of Daredevil, The Man Without Fear. After a meeting, Don was complaining about the request that he'd had to move into more ludicrous areas of crime. At least, areas of crime he considered to be ludicrous. I think most of us would, actually. Fisk seems to respond by giving Don a temple massage to help ease his boss's stress. However, this doesn't last, as while Don is soothed momentarily and at peace, Fisk then decides to snap his neck. The moment also goes to show just how much Don trusted Wilson. Granted, Don Rigoletto was still a crime boss, but Wilson in a lot of ways was probably a worse replacement when it came to how much power he has managed to amass and how dangerously he wields that power. Number 7 joined HYDRA. Kingpin ended up joining up with HYDRA later on, even becoming one of its leaders. Or at least, so he thought. When it was revealed that higher up the chain, the Red Skull was also involved, Kingpin decided to break ties. Evil as he was, even he didn't want to be allied with the Red Skull. However, he still, for a time, was the one seemingly controlling HYDRA behind the scenes, with Supreme HYDRA, who unknowingly was actually his son, Richard, reporting to him. In fact, Richard had actually infiltrated HYDRA while his father was in a permanent state of shock, almost comatose, and had set up everything for his dad to simply come along and take control. Too bad Red Skull was involved though. Kingpin's plan at the time was to overthrow the United States government, and he and HYDRA, up until the Red Skull reveal, actually made for a pretty powerful alliance. Number 6 put Aunt May in the ICU. While this one wasn't intentional, Kingpin did end up being the one responsible for almost killing Aunt May. Notably though, Aunt May seems to have some kind of like immortality powers, at least when it comes to plots and scripts, as she didn't die here, nor has she ever really properly died anytime her life has been threatened or seemingly even snuffed out. Spider-Man had actually been Kingpin's target. This was after Spider-Man had revealed his true identity of Peter Parker to the world. This put a target on Peter's back, obviously, with Kingpin putting a hit on Spider-Man. However, the shooter who was aiming for Peter missed, and instead hit his Aunt May, who was with Peter at the time. Aunt May ended up on death's doorstep and very nearly died here. Meanwhile, Peter donned his black suit and searched for the one responsible. When he found out it was Fisk, he went to pay Kingpin a visit in prison in issue 542 of Amazing Spider-Man. Oh yeah, Kingpin did all of this from a prison cell, by the way. Peter beat him to within an inch of his life as a warning and declared that if May didn't make it, he would be back to finish the job. It was such an evil thing that it even made Spider-Man momentarily pretty evil. Number 5. First kill. As tragic as Wilson Fisk's origins are, the fact remains that he committed his first murder at a young age. In the 1998 Daredevil series, considered Volume 2 overall, in issue number 15, we get a look back on what Wilson Fisk's childhood was like. His parents struggle to make ends meet and are constantly arguing about the finances. Bills unpaid means that things are constantly turning off in the Fisk household. One such thing they end up losing is the heat, which results in Wilson's pet rat, Benjamin Franklin, freezing to death. At least, I think that's a rat. I wasn't sure if it was a rat or a mouse when I was looking at the comic, but I'm pretty sure it's a rat because of the tail. I'm no animal expert though, or rodent expert for that matter. Fisk becomes obsessed with money, and at one point is paid $15 to start a fire. When a maintenance man gets in the way of his plan, he becomes Wilson's first kill. That is how obsessive young Wilson has become at this point, and continues to be pretty much throughout his life. Pretty obsessive guy. Number 4. Killed Crazy Horse. Crazy Horse was the nickname given to Maya Lopez's aka Echo's father. His real name was Willie Lincoln, and he ended up dying because of his connection to Kingpin. Initially, Wilson and Willie were best friends, thick as thieves, and Fisk appreciated Willie's off-the-wall nature. Wilson himself was a bit crazy when it came to his behavior at the time, and having Crazy Horse around helped him to feel, I guess, a little bit more sane by comparison. That is until Crazy Horse got a little too wild even for Wilson. Kingpin ordered Lincoln killed and then raised Maya as his ward. He sent her to all the best schools, seeing potential in her. You can imagine Maya's reaction when years later she realized that Wilson was the one responsible for taking her father from her. She attempted to kill Wilson, shooting him point blank in the head. Fisk would actually surprisingly survive this, though he would be left blind for a time as a result of that attack. I still can't believe that he survived it. Like, that's crazy. Number 3. Brutally kills Anatoly Renskahov. In the Daredevil Netflix series, Anatoly Renskahov is a leader of the Russian mafia in New York. When he fails the Kingpin, unable to get the true name of Daredevil from night nurse Claire Temple, Kingpin decides he wants to have a word with Anatoly. Renskahov comes forward himself, actually wishing to speak with Kingpin and kind of clear the air. But this is not the type of word Kingpin had in mind. Instead, Fisk begins to attack Renskahov, and despite Renskahov's own toughness, the man survived life in Russian prison after all, Fisk kills him using a car door to crush his head. The crazy part is throughout the scene we learn it is not Renskahov's failure that has actually ignited Fisk's rage here, but the fact that he embarrassed Wilson in front of Vanessa while the two were on a date. This just goes to show how dangerous it is to upset Kingpin, as he has generally been shown as having a very violent streak and a sometimes off-the-wall temper. To relive this moment, you can return to the shocking end of episode 4 of season 1. The Daredevil series, at least in Canada by the way, is still on Netflix and available to stream. I was watching it earlier. It's great. Number 2. Killed Spider-Man. Sometimes people forget the Kingpin isn't just a Daredevil villain, he's a prominent Spider-Man villain as well. In fact, his first appearance wasn't in Daredevil, it was actually in an issue of Amazing Spider-Man, issue number 50 to be exact, which we actually talked about at the beginning of this list. So it didn't come as a surprise when he showed up as the main villain in the Spider-Man animated film Into the Spider-Verse, at least for fans that know this about him, I guess. What did come as a surprise though was that he actually succeeded in killing Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker, in the movie. Fortunately, at the same time, Spider-Man, aka Miles Morales, was just discovering his own spider powers, and had a multiversal team of spider folks end up joining him in order to stop Wilson Fisk's evil plot. Still, Kingpin did kill Peter Parker in cold blood, and then also tried to play it like he'd always thought of Spider-Man as a great hero and was friends with the guy, even throwing a banquet in Spider-Man's honor afterward and inviting love of his life, Mary Jane Watson, to it. Wow. Number 1. Completely ruined Daredevil's life. During the Born Again story arc, Daredevil's true identity as Matt Murdock ends up being used against him. Kingpin ends up acquiring this information, which was sold by Karen Page for drugs in Mexico, but finds its way to him in New York. Kingpin then attempts to ruin Matt Murdock and thereby Daredevil's life in every conceivable way. His house ends up being firebombed, and even his uniform is left in tatters. His accounts are frozen by the IRS. Fisk even tries to ruin his reputation as a lawyer by getting a police lieutenant to swear that he saw Murdock bribe a witness to commit an act of perjury while on the stand. Not only that, but he also threatens the life of Karen Page as well, almost killing her. What do you think is the most evil deed Kingpin has ever committed? What is your favorite depiction of Kingpin? Are you excited for the Devil's Reign series and event over at Marvel Comics? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. below. This has been Top 10 Nerd, and I'm your host Amanda McKnight, reminding you as always to stay nerdy, YouTube.